Sound check. Happy Friday. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
So, before we get started, let some more people have an opportunity to get on. Has anybody had sellers pushing back or saying that they want to wait until after the effective date? Anybody?
I had one that I said, let's have a conversation about it. He wanted to read it over and has not answered my calls ever since.
No one, no one is
Okay.
pushing back, Rob, but the more people I speak with, the more of them are aware of what actually could be happening.
Great. Now, I couldn't see who the first person that spoke was, and I'm on a remote site. Who was that?
Janine,
Oh, Janine. So, you know, one of the things that I think we need to be aware of is, you know, what exactly did they hear? Because I think a lot of people hear a soundbite or a little bit of information from when they logged on to their, YouTube or Google homepage, and they're formulating opinions, and they're really just pressing us. So one of the things that, and I would get in the habit of writing maybe some of these things down, said, hey, I was thinking of, holding off until after the settlement becomes effective, to save some money. And the thing I would encourage everybody to write down is, okay, that's interesting. What have you heard? Because a lot of times you're going to get a blank stare when you say that. Can you tell me what you heard? And the people that have, and Bobby, you had said that, there's an awareness, but maybe not much pushback yet. What do you think the public's heard? I don't know if you're able to talk, Bobby Golden.
It's a matter of what they perceive or what they think they heard. And it really, the common theme is that realtors are getting sued because they fixed the commission and that sort of thing. But once I have the discussion with them and then I explain to them what it's always been and how the commission is going to be predicated on buyer agency and that sort of stuff, then, oh, okay, oh, that makes sense. All right, I didn't know that. And so you have to hold their hand a little bit, tell them the facts, and I haven't really had any problems, just some awareness.
And Bobby, do you think that the consumer and the public can sense our confidence level and our certainty? And I'm speaking through you to your entire team and office.
The public,
Yeah, so like if I'm talking to you, or if one of an agent's talking to a consumer, right? If the agent isn't certain of what they're talking about, will the public sense that, in your opinion?
without question.
Right. So I think, you know, I'm gonna mute everybody.
Perché polve? Ah, perché? Uno con poca sal.
All right, Bobby, if you can unmute yourself. You have a lot of agents of different experience levels and different productivity in your office and on your team. And I think when the question gets asked, not only the words that we use or the process that we use to handle the question or the objection matters, um, but our confidence level matters. I had a meeting with one of our top teams, probably was 2.5 hours, kind of just refreshing on all these changes that are going on. And just to put down a couple of basic responses, and get them to come across natural. It was almost at times comical at how they would mess the words up, or the sequence of the words. The confidence matters, the sequence that we convey it matters. Okay. And a really good analogy for me would be, if you look at like a uber successful, I'm just going to use a comedian. Like, let's just say you had Chris Rock or whoever your comedian is. They make millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars by delivering the joke or the message. If I gave that message to Ron Piccolo or myself, we'd still be broke on the corner panhandling because nobody would laugh at our jokes. But that's because of the confidence and the commitment to how you deliver it. If you know, when somebody says, "Hey, I heard that I might be able to save some money," um, back in, if I wait till August 17th, or I'm going to wait till August 17th to save some money, we don't know what they heard. So if we say, "Hey, can you share with me what you heard?" right? Because they might have said, well, I just heard something in passing. Well, if you don't mind, I'm gonna go over all the options that you have, because I think now that the public has a greater awareness, there's even more options and transparency to the same system we had before. So let me explain that to you. Okay. Um, for the buyers, the simple message that I had, and the buyers are often sellers, and sellers are and buyers are kind of the opposite side of the same deal. But if you were to go and say, um, hey Rob, has anyone taken the time to sit you down and share with you what it takes to be a successful buyer in this market? And it almost can be flipped. Hey, Denise, has anyone taken the time to sit down with you and share with you all your options and choices that you have as a seller to be successful in the sale of your home?
Absolutely.
Right? Because everybody has options. They've had options, but I really think that this is what I'm going to keep referring to as separation season. Okay, this is separation season, because when things were crazy, a lot of people without the requisite skills would go out and they would get listings. They would mismanage them. They would often cost their clients a lot of money and heartache. A lot of buyer's agents were out there and they didn't have the requisite skills to do the job correctly for their clients. Now we're going to need to be able to articulate what it is that we do and how we're able to deliver that. So if we were to just like forget about like taking notes right now for a second, and let's just think about mindset. Okay. And here's the mindset of where the market is. There are agents that there are agents that there are agents that have given up and exited the industry. So when the market returns to normal, we might be in a slightly better spot, or at least a lot of the people that came in during COVID will be washed out. From a mindset perspective, it's probably going to be more important that that we are a trusted advisor and can articulate the benefits to working with us more so now than it's ever been. Because there's the proliferation of these discount companies. They've been around for many years, but if they don't see value, buyers are going to go directly to listing agents. Listing agents are not going to be able to articulate the benefits of doing certain making certain offerings, and the system's going to be challenged. Okay. For our team in Florida, I think we've seen inventory building up a little bit more. And I would argue that if we limit the amount of activity of people coming in to see our inventory, okay, it's not going to be positive on the outcome that we deliver to our clients. Right. So if we pull away, compensation, and the inventory is building up, if we can't articulate what that means to a seller, okay, we're either not going to win, we're going to sit on inventory that becomes stale, which all of these things are not helping our sellers to get the highest price in the shortest period of time with the least amount of stress, right? That's our mission. And we want to get our sellers the highest possible price. We want to do it in the shortest possible time in the least amount of stress. Is there anything else that sellers really want, or do they all kind of fit in those three buckets? Anybody? I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
So the only thing standing between, you and the person that's doing twice or four times the amount of what you are doing is mastering the message and having that message out there more times. That could be, if you have marketing, but you can't close deals, that doesn't do us any good. We all have a gold mine, a treasure trove, which is our clients that we've worked with, both ones that have bought or sold through us or ones that we have spoken to that have not transacted. And then we have our sphere of influence. Everybody there is watching us to deliver the message. Okay. for those of us who've been in the business like me, 30 plus years, one might think, oh, technology might, limit our role in this whole process. But I think it doesn't. I think what it does is it makes the transaction more complex. Okay. And it's going to provide a pathway for those of us who are committed to our craft and to our communication. Okay. So being good at selling houses for more money in a shorter period of time and having a less stressful transaction doesn't do the trick if we can't communicate how we do that. If we can't show what goes on behind the curtain and explain to the consumer why it's beneficial for them to take certain actions. And there might be cases where, we educate our consumers and they say, hey, I don't want to offer compensation. I don't want to give a concession. And that's fine. But if there's one person where most of his people or her people are not offering anything out, and there's another group of agents where on average, 5% don't offer it out or 1% don't offer it out, it's probably due to our own bias or our own presentation skills as to how people respond and behave.
Hey,
That
Rob,
makes it. Go ahead.
can I share a story?
Sure.
All right, so I went on a listing appointment yesterday, went through my normal presentation, had the conversation with the owner, things were going good. Then I said, listen, there's gonna be some change coming in August. Here's what the changes are gonna be, and I tell them my opinion and my point of view on the changes that are coming. So I explained to him about, he has the, a homeowner has the option of paying the full commission or just paying the seller side, blah, blah, blah. The homeowner looked at me and says, Bobby, that's crazy. Why wouldn't I want to pay a full commission? Because if I'm only paying the listing agent, that means the agents working with the buyers probably won't show my home. So the only reason I bring that up is that I want the agents that are on this call to know, don't panic. People are gonna figure this out and they're gonna figure out the right way to market their home. So you will get some pushback, no two ways about it, but I am not panicked about this. And I do think that people will exercise common sense and figure out the right thing to do to market their home.
So,
It's up to us really to educate them. When you're at a listing appointment, is to educate them. We do need outside brokers, like Rob was saying, get the best price, the shortest amount of time, and the best terms to get your house sold.
Yeah, I have another story. Good morning, everyone. This is Karma with Remax Princeton. I met a buyer. I showed him a home, and I shared with him, and I said, did you hear about the commission for the buyer? He said, yes, but I believe that in this case, that the prices of the home are going to be lower and basically going to be equal the same.
now, when I was, I'm actually out in Ohio. When I was driving out here, I listened to a report on CNBC about millennials. Okay. And there's going to be a great wealth transfer going on when, the baby boomers or the generation that parented millennials, and the millennials feel, of all ironies, that real estate is the best investment that they can put their money into. Unfortunately,
I agree.
they believe the second best investment is crypto, and stocks is either third or fourth. And the current generation is securities and stocks is second. So it's really interesting how, like, I wouldn't have thought that millennials would have thought real estate was such a great investment, but I guess they've seen like the the recent run up, and they've seen the shortage of supply in housing, and they really see that real estate is a tremendous investment, which for me is incredibly encouraging when there were a lot of discussions about younger generations not wanting to be into home ownership. And to Bobby's point, I'm going to guess, Bobby, that your client was a repeat client. I mean, obviously they bought a home, but you know if they've ever sold one before, or that was for Bobby Golden? maybe you can't talk, but I think the people that have already sold a house once before, they're gonna be, their expectation was, how do I attract bees without honey? If I don't put any compensation out there, nobody's gonna take a look at it, right? But our whole industry is now being barraged by, oh, did you hear about this settlement, right? And we're all like running around like, what am I gonna do? And sometimes I think we put it into our clients and our prospective clients' head that, hey, you don't have to do this, but now let me tell you why you want to do it when it never really was an issue. Okay. And I am in no way saying that we want to be, we want to lack full transparency, but, you could have, 5 years ago, maybe put $1 out is an offer of compensation, or you could have done it as an exclusive listing with a waiver of broker cooperation. So the world hasn't changed dramatically. It's just that now there's a lot of discussion in our industry, and there's some discussion in the media. I was watching a Jared James podcast, and he had made this comment which kind of stuck with me. He said, you know, big news for a day, but most people aren't paying attention after that one headline. And he said, when Michael Jackson died, it dominated the news cycle for 24 hours, then it disappeared. So think about that. It's dominating our mind space, but I don't think the public is seeing it like we are. Like if you're on, real estate podcasts, or you're getting emails or Inman or Housing Wire, that's all we're all talking about is DOJ this, settlements delayed. We have a new form coming out, right? It's just overwhelming. But the public doesn't see any of that. The public's maybe saw one headline, then maybe they saw the end of the 6% is dead. They're going to talk to you, and you could say, tell me what you heard. And no, I don't even remember what I heard. Fantastic. Well, let me share with you what your options are. I want to make sure that we're transparent and give you all the right tools to make the correct choice for you and your family. That's never changed. And I see, I don't know, Gary, are you able to talk? Gary Singer, Mr. Springfield?
Yes.
I think now experience and communication is going to matter more than ever, right? Because people are there's going to be people out there putting out zero compensation. There are going to be listings that are sitting there longer, and we need to make those choices, right? I mean, I'm going to guess if you have a repeat client, Gary, they're looking at you as an advisor, not a salesperson, correct?
That is true. Yes,
And that's a different selling perspective, isn't it?
it is. Yeah. There's a different prestige level, and what you say really matters.
Yep. And even when I hear you talk about that, you speak with, tremendous confidence. And I think that that's what we all need to lean into, Gary, is how do we, control the narrative, control the conversation, so that we have satisfied clients that, were empowered to make the right decisions. And let's take the noise of, are we allowed to put a buyer concession in a certain field in the MLS? That's taken a lot of our space in our head, right? When we should be focusing on taking care of our clients. Okay. And, for those of you who like to get granular, I'm sure I'll be doing some research on, how to, 2% commissions perform compared to 2.5 or 3% offerings out to the public, if you want to go in that space and educate your client. And my guess is, and it's only a hypothesis, is that if you're putting an extra 1% out, you're probably getting 2% more on your sale price relative to your ask. That's my hypothesis. But we can all run those numbers in the MLSs that we have and share those with our clients. It does look a little bit like work, but prices have gone up tremendously. So we're getting paid more to do what we do. And if putting a little bit of work in up front does one of two things, one gives you the resources to help your client make the right decision, and number two, more importantly, it educates you and gives you the confidence to be a little bit better of a advisor in that space when you talk to your clients. Okay, because I'll bet you, and I haven't done it exhaustively, but I'll bet you in different markets, the compensation offering has different impacts on how homes sell. there are some markets, that we're in where the norm might be 2% buyer broker commission. And there might be other markets where the norm might still be 2.5 to 3. And there are some out of state markets where it's 1 to 1.5%. So, real estate's extremely local. You need to look at how those things behave. And I think more than ever, buyers and sellers, need us, right? They need us more than ever. And if we're needed and we can control the communication and provide options, we're going to, probably make the same or more money, because people are going to be exiting that aren't investing in themselves on how to hold these conversations. I would bet you, most of the times when I see listings and I sign them, where it's like, oh, the listing is 5.5 or 5% or 4%, not really 4, but let's say it's 5. And if I sell it myself, I'll take a 0.5% off or 1% off. It's the same agents that are doing that consistently. And maybe they believe it's something that is necessary to sell, or maybe it's just their own bias that they throw the cherry on the top to try to, close a transaction, which, not every consumer is concerned about that. Right? I mean, if you take a buyer that you have and you sell them your own listing, do you think that that's a diminished service?
No,
I mean, do we? No, right?
no, it's the same thing like if you sell the property on the first day, does that mean that you shouldn't have to pay full commission? No, it's just you did what you were being paid to do.
Right. But there are some people, Robert, that by default will say, hey, if I sell it myself, I'll knock 1% off. And
Right.
it doesn't need to be done. Okay. And I look across other industries and probably now more than typical, we're not an industry that is, where that revenue is optional to a healthy business. I mean, if we're doing both sides of a transaction, we're doing the job to the highest standard, why would we want to discount it just because we're doing both ends? Okay, I mean, you can do that if that's something that a seller wants, or maybe there's a seller that's not going to want you to do both ends. But those shouldn't be across the board by the way that we present it. Those should be things that maybe get brought up by clients as you progress the conversation. All right. So, in terms of communication or conversation styles that you have, does anybody have a written out or and I hate the word script, but have a script for when a seller might say, hey, do I still need to offer out 3%? Do I still need to pay a buyer's broker? Does anyone have that where it's like hitting a button and you can hit the response to that?
It's gotta be natural. You can't script it. You just have to be natural and tell them, that we need outside brokers.
I agree
So-
with Rob. Gotta be natural.
I don't think most sellers, I've been on a few listing appointments the past few weeks. And a lot of them don't even mention anything about the lawsuit. Like Bobby was saying, we would kind of bring it up. We said there's going to be some changes in August. There's going to be some new laws, but pretty much we're going to do business as usual, except for we can't put buyers brokers commission into the MLS, but we still have to use outside brokers. And they all agree. They said, well, that's fine, so. And if I get any pushback, in my class the other day, we were talking about it. If you get any pushback, you can say to the owner, well, there's a form that we have where you'll pay me 5% or 6%. And out of that, we'll go ahead, our company will pay buyer's broker 2.5% or whatever we decide to pay them. And you shouldn't have any pushback from that. So I think it's going to be relatively easy, but you got to kind of explain it in your own ways, in your own words, and you gotta kind of practice it on your own, but it should come natural to you. I mean, all the education that we're getting is phenomenal. It's just-
This, it's not only just the buyer's broker commission you can't put in the MLS, the way I understand it. You can't put any commission in the MLS. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, what other commission would you be putting in there, Jeff?
Well, the seller, whatever they're offering you.
Right, but generally, I don't know any MLSs where you put the seller commission into the MLS part.
Oh, okay. I got you.
There
Yeah.
is
There was,
in,
I'm sorry, there was
um,
it's Netta on Gary's phone. There was another agent that I saw was getting a little creative and she put the commission in the showing time notes. Can we do that?
Oh,
So Netta, those are the pieces that are going to play out
Okay.
over time. And I'm gonna put those in things that are distractions to our core mission. Like if we're worried about where we can post the commission, we're not on our game. Like that's gonna be determined by not you, Bobby, Ron. Somebody's gonna determine that. And we're just gonna follow the process. I think in listening to what you said, and this is just new, this is just something I hadn't thought about. What if somebody says to us, well, why are they preventing you from putting the commission in the MLS? What are we going to say to that? And who has a good answer? And I see, and Deborah, I see you have your hand, you raise your hand. I'll come to you in a moment. But if
greedy
somebody says to you, Ron, why aren't you allowed to offer a commission in the MLS if it's not illegal?
just gonna say that there's some lawsuits that happened, and buyers felt that they weren't being represented properly. And it created a huge lawsuit against NAR. And now the outcome of that is we can't put the commissions in the MLS any longer that what we're paying out to the buyers brokers.
Okay,
I've had that question before.
okay.
And my
So,
answer is there's agents out there that will prioritize what they want to share with you based on the commission, and that's not right. It's true.
okay, so
Everything.
and that would have been one of the things that I probably would have leaned towards, right? That agents are going to steer, but that really puts our industry in a very questionable light. And I would say from my 30 years of experience that steering based upon the commission, maybe there's a subconscious bias to do that, but I don't know any agents that I've worked with that are like, oh, let me try to get Ron Piccolo to buy this house because it's paying out 3% versus the one that's paying out 2%. When you go around, are you mentally like trying to push one above the other because the commission is higher? I honestly don't see that happening in our industry. Maybe there's a subconscious bias. I don't know. And I think sometimes there's a water cooler talk like, hey, I pushed my client to do this, but no, I don't see that in practice.
I wouldn't think that would happen if you had a buyer broker agreement in place, because no matter what the seller's offering, you're going to get paid what you
Right.
agreed to anyways.
Right. And Jeff, we're talking about like the before process here, right? And so when somebody says, well, why are they not allowing the buyer commission to be advertised in the MLS? And I would put it to you this way that okay, I would put it to you this way that would you agree, Ron, that agents provide different levels of service, have different levels of experience, and thus different levels of value,
Yes,
right? And Ron, what the decoupling or the removal of agent compensation in the MLS is designed to do, and designed to give the buyers, to empower buyers to select the level of service they want from the agents that they hire and have that be independent of what the seller is offering as compensation to that client, whether it be commission or a concession. So, and if you really think through this, right, there are there's a company called Redfin. We've heard about Redfin, right? Okay, I had actually worked with a Redfin manager who managed 19 people, and because they paid their salespeople a quasi flat fee, it was like $1,000 for a certain sales price, and it went up to like $1 million. Maybe they could get paid $3,000, but they were on salary, so they were constantly getting complaints from the buyers, right? And I remember the response was, "Well, you're getting a rebate on the commission, so you need to suck it up, Buttercup, because you're getting the service that you paid for, right? So if you're getting a third of the commission refunded to you in that process, right?" He was saying you can't expect to have a full service agent if you're getting paid, if you're getting a third of the commission back. So that would be that was available before, right? That's basically the same thing that's happening here. So you can decide to pay your agent 1%, and if the listing agent puts out 2.5%, then that extra 1.5, whether it's commission or whether it's seller concession, is then that benefits going towards the buyer, right? If you're the best buyer's agent on the planet, right, and sellers are putting out 2.5 buyer concessions, but you command 3%, then the buyer will pay more for that value. They'll pay more for the value. So I don't know. I think I put a couple of people on hold, but Deborah, you had a comment?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Yes, as far as putting it in, one of the conditions for DOJ and NAR settlement is that we cannot have compensation on anything that has an MLS feed showing and our tools. Showing assist, showing time, all of those, that is one of our tools from the MLS. Therefore, nothing, not even comments, anything, and they're going to be scrolling, can go into showing time. So that's why we can't do it there. On your website, also, you need to be really careful. You can put something about your own personal listing only and nothing else.
I
So
think
if you're
in the broker remarks, you can put in for
No.
more information on this, you know,
Mm,
go to a
no,
website.
you really, really, really do not want to do that, because therefore that is an MLS feed and you are giving instructions on commission. And don't forget, this was an antitrust case. So because it was an antitrust case, it's like a company who's coming in and putting all of the rules and everything out there. And that's what they don't want to see. They don't want to see any little funny language, nothing, absolutely nothing.
So I want to just take a step back from our business, okay? And I want to just share something with everybody that you should find to be refreshing, which is over the past, I guess since all these DOJ comments have gone out there, I've had a greater awareness of what's going on in the I guess the enforcement climate. And I will say I saw Google, I saw Apple, Microsoft. All these companies are getting hit with DOJ litigation and lawsuits. Facebook is constantly getting antitrust litigation. Okay, and I forget what amount Google had to pay out for some antitrust, and Apple, because they don't want everybody to, like, they limit who gets on the Apple Store and can download their apps. All these things are now coming under extreme scrutiny from the DOJ. So it's not just like we're the only industry that's being targeted. I mean, airlines aren't allowed to merge. There's just a lot of enforcement activity from the Department of Justice. So this whole, antitrust piece, I just think it's caught up in a climate of, enforcement actions. Some might say overreach, or whatever it is. I think that, a storm makes us stronger. And 2008-9, when the market collapsed, then my life was very different before that as a Remax owner. Okay. And in 2008 and 9, when agents were struggling, I had to take a different approach to how I could add value. And the approach was not just to attract the best talent and let those people network with each other and everything works out. It was like, all right, all hands on deck, roll up your sleeves. Let's work together to figure this out and find a better solution. So this year is going to leave us in a much, much better place at the end of this, regardless of what I do stand on. Hang on.
So Rob, I got a question. Since we can't,
So Gary, I had to mute you because everybody else was on background noise. Go ahead. Gary?
okay. Yeah, I have a question about if sellers are willing to put out a commission for a buyer's agent. How is a buyer's agent going to know that they're giving it out, other than calling an agent and verbally asking them, since they're not allowed to put it in the MLS?
So this is our old habits, okay? Because our compensation, Gary, is going to be determined by our agreement with the buyer, right? So if I meet with my buyer and I make an agreement that I'm going to get paid 3%, then when we go out and look at houses, if they're putting out, 1%, no percent, 3%, that's part of the terms when we rate the offer up. I'm sitting down with the buyer. I'm saying, hey, this person's offering 3% out, but in reality, it doesn't make that much of a difference, because let's just say if they're offering 3% out and discount Redfin brokers coming in saying, I'll take 1%, I'm going to bid 500, right? And we're bidding 510 and we want 3%. The price is the same, right? Or if we're
No, my question is, how do we know if a seller is willing to give out a buyer's commission, a buyer's agent's commission?
So
how are we supposed to know? It's not on the MLS, and we have to do. You can't put it in the MLS. Are we gonna have to say to the listing agent, hey, are you giving out a buyer's commission?
I'm going to go ask this to Deborah. Deborah, is the beaches going to allow a concession field, or not even that?
Nobody in the United States will have a concession field. You'll have a buyer's field. So on the buyer field, they are going to be giving either a percentage or a flat fee. Now, one of the forms that just came out, I don't know if everybody got them yet, but the forms did come out. There is a broker-to-broker compensation form. You can call the other agent and ask them to send it to you, so you will know ahead of time what the compensation is. As an agent, my opinion is if you have showing time or showing assist, and if you don't, you probably want to make sure you get it, because what that will do for you is that when someone clicks on for showing instructions, you want to make sure everybody clicks on showing instructions. You have their information. You can be known as a better agent because automatically you are sending them over the compensation form broker to broker, so they don't even have to call you. And what that's going to do for us is we will be known as a more proactive agent, a better professional, and maybe some others will start doing that. But you have an opportunity to send that form out to everybody, to all the agents ahead of time. It's just a good practice that we need to get into. It's a little different, but it's just another step.
Can that be put into the multiple listing as one of the forms like we
Nope.
have? You can't.
No, nothing. The only thing you can do is on showing assist. When someone clicks on your listing to show it, they're getting showing instructions. You as the listing agent will then take the ball and send them the broker to broker compensation. Then they don't have to call you because you've already sent it to them. You're on top of the game.
Yeah,
Does
when
that
you
make sense?
Yeah, when you go for the listing, you need to have that form. There's 3 forms I think that we're talking about. One's the broker to broker, the other one's from seller to buyer's agent. And there's another one, I think it's, I can't remember, but anyway, when you go to the listing, you need to get your listing contract signed, and you also need to get those buyers brokers, or the broker's compensation signed also. So like Deborah was saying, once you click on confirming the appointment, you have all the information for that buyer's broker. You can send them over that form that you had that seller sign, so that they know that they're getting paid on that particular listing.
Are y'all saying that that can be done automatically when they click on showing assist or showing time?
No,
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 you
when they
have to
click on
send it.
showing assist or showing time, you can't have anything in there. My suggestion is when they click on, we don't have to confirm their appointments. They can have a show and go. However, you know who has clicked on your listing. You automatically, as a new practice, just automatically send over the broker to broker. And don't forget, that's one thing that isn't going to change, is that we are the ones who are promising compensation. It might come from the seller and they're promising compensation, the buyer's promising compensation, but as soon as we put that broker to broker out there, we're promising it. And that's where some of the issues could arise between brokers on compensation. So make sure that you do get that out there. They sign it, you sign it, they sign it, send it back, done. If you do it in dot loop, they don't even have to do anything.
So it's safe to say that there's going to be some friction, and there's going to be some challenges in the transition period, because we've never made a change like this before. But the how Deborah and everybody, I think, is what's sidetracking everybody else from the where are we going to be. Like, it's uncertain how we're going to get there, but it seems like we're going to be going in that direction. And the how we get there will work itself out. The messaging and the principle, like, Gary, your comment about how we're going to know how much they're paying. I think we might be thinking as an industry a year down the road as, this offer here is taking 1%. This offer here wants 3%. We're looking at what the net's going to be. So we're not thinking the same way we did a month ago, Gary.
Yeah, well, buyer's gonna say, hey, if I want to know how much I'm gonna have to possibly pay out and on this house before I even look at it. I mean, those are the questions that are probably gonna end up happening. And then we got to reach out to either the listing agent or something and get back to, our buyers and say, hey, this seller is not going to be offering us any compensation, so it's gonna be, or this one is, and they can determine, how much, to either adjust on the offer price or not. I mean, is that seem logical?
That is a little correct, yes, but a buyer you tell the buyers if they say 2% or 3%, it's coming in at 1%. We do have something on there that shows it, and we have something that says that the buyer can can ask for compensation in the offer. So it's just transparency. It's just more words for us to use.
So, and this is not just a Gary comment, but I think for all of us, changing the career-long process is going to have it's going to feel uncomfortable. That's all I'm going to say. It's going to feel different. And I think the sooner we change our mindset to a buyer, the listing appointment that we've been accustomed to going on, where we always ask for them to commit to us. Now we need to go into a much stronger buyer value prop, and then it doesn't matter what the seller is putting out, because if somebody else is paying their buyer's agent 1% and we're getting paid 3%, it doesn't really matter what's in the MLS or what they're putting out. They're going to look at the totality of the transaction. Does that make sense, Gary, or not really?
Well, what happens to that 1% that the buyer's broker is giving to the buyer's broker? The buyer is giving to the buyer's broker, that 1%.
Okay, so
The seller's giving to the buyer's broker.
Well,
Gary,
they're giving 3%.
So Gary and Ron, let me just try to rephrase this here. And this is probably if we're going to provide a higher level of service, right? Our buyer our buyer needs to be aware that they are in fact paying us. So if the seller's paying, 5% commission and we've signed a contract for 2, then they're getting 3% back compared to others. If that's what they're offering as a commission, not on the MLS, or if that's a concession that they're offering. Now, how we find out about that, that's a whole nother process that we need to get comfortable with. But if somebody's getting paid, somebody's getting paid 3% and somebody's getting paid 1% or asking for 1% on a transaction, the seller is going to look at it and say, this one with Gary is costing me 2% more with what they're asking as a concession than this one with Redfin, which is asking me for 1%. So we need to be able to document the value that we provide in order to compete. Okay, because we can't collect a 2.5-3% commission and expect the seller to look at our offer the same as somebody who's putting in a request for 1% compensation. Right, the money comes from somewhere.
Rob, sorry.
Okay,
I have a question. So I have a buyer broker agreement signed with my buyer for between price ranges 400 to 480 or 500, and commissions are 3% with my buyer. If the listing agent is providing a 1% brokerage commission, my buyer is going to pay me 2%, correct? At
Yes.
closing. But that arrangement is only going to be between the buyer, myself, the lender, and the title company, correct?
The buyer, yourself, the lender, and the title company. You mean so not the seller?
Well, this is the thing. My concern is that now when the it shouldn't be a concern, because if my buyer is paying me 2%, the seller is paying 1% because that's only what it's to pay. I don't see why they should be questioning what my buyer is going to be paying me separately.
Wouldn't that 1% go towards the buyer's closing costs or concessions?
Well, it's not closing cost. Well, yeah, they're offering that compensation, but my arrangement with my buyer is 3%.
Hey, Rob, I have one question. How about commercial and rental? Is this new law also going to be applied to the commercial and actually rentals?
So, Deborah, this does not apply to rentals, correct? Deborah Gibes?
No, it doesn't apply to rentals.
And how about commercial?
Commercial is not in this. This is residential that's on here. Now, Lisa, you had a question?
Rob?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
So my question is, what's going to happen with the existing listing agreements? Because my client called me yesterday and he said, I want to change my listing agreement with you and take out the commission offering to the buyer's agent. And I said, well, wait a minute, we have to wait till the forms are coming out. So that's my question. How do we handle that?
Well,
with the existing ones?
Well, I mean, they can offer no compensation right now. I mean, it doesn't seem to be in their best interest, but there's no requirement for compensation. And there, to my knowledge, there will be new listing forms coming out. I'm not 100% certain with every state and every MLS what the transition is going to be for existing listings. I don't have that. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure that that's even determined yet. Deborah, do you know if that's determined, or is Bobby Golden on, or Rob Golden?
July 23rd is when the new listing agreement is coming out.
Or I meant Robert.
There's an amended listing agreement coming out on July 23rd.
Bobby Durso's not here. I know the answer.
Okay.
The meeting the other day, but Lisa, couldn't you just do a modification of the listing with the current modification form that we have?
Yeah, but why would you try to persuade your seller that you need the outside brokers to help you?
Right.
I did. I did over and over and over. He's so stubborn. He thinks he knows everything better than anyone else.
Right. So not to diverge too far from where I wanted this conversation to go, but, and I'll stay on a little bit afterwards for some of the procedural questions, which I may not have all the answers to. But what I want to say is that, sellers are looking for advice from us. Okay, they're looking for us to be their real estate advisor. They're looking for us to be the person with the answers. And, to me, having answers means that, I need to know the premise behind it, right? And, if a seller says, I don't want to offer out any type of concession or compensation to a buyer, my fiduciary duty obligates me to educate them on what might happen if there are less people that are qualified. Hold on. So if there are less people that can afford to buy a house because we're not offering compensation and agents aren't good enough to structure, negotiate on behalf of their buyers so that they can qualify for financing and pay their buyer's agent, we might have less activity on the home that we're looking to sell. And if there's less activity, that might ultimately land them with a lower net price, even after paying a commission or a compensation. Now, another phenomenon, which I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, is, perhaps after this happens, maybe, all the transactions have some sort of a compensation in there in terms of a seller concession. And that might just become the norm, and in New Jersey, that might be something that gets negotiated during attorney review. I'm not a futurist. I can't predict exactly how it lands, but I do know that if we educate the public, the sellers and the buyers, and we have full transparency, because those of us that are on this call here, by and large, in an overwhelming manner, are far more educated, experienced, successful than the average agent out there, and we can command a compensation that is consistent with our skill level, right? If you go to hire an attorney, do they all have different rates that they charge? The answer is yes. And why do they all have different rates that they charge? It's because they have different experience and different skill sets. So that's where we're going. We're going into a skills-based market. And the skills are no longer just real estate skills. It's also communication skills. It's education skills. Most agents know what's happening. Good agents understand what's happening. The best agents can teach and explain what's happening. Okay, it's that third level of being able to teach and explain, which is where we're going. And I just feel like this conversation here, and it's definitely warranted, but we went into the direction of like, how are we going to get there? And like, do we need a new form? How is this going to be communicated? Like, these are all things that will play out. They will be communicated. I wish I had a better answer for you today so we could check that box, but that's not the environment that we're in. The environment we're in right now is we need to document and share with our clients, the benefits and drawbacks to all the actions that they take. And we truly need to be their advisor, and not just a buyer's agent that opens the door anymore. There's a difference between buyer's agents, and buyer's agents will be paid differently and more equitably after this is completed, okay, by decoupling it. And I don't know if anybody's gotten to the point where I am, where I'm like, I feel pretty good about the fact that, it doesn't depend on what door I open, how much I get paid, that it depends upon the relationship and the contract I establish with my client. I think that's a good thing, because we've all sold listings where we got 1.5% or 2%. And, a lot of times those listings where they offer out less compensation, the other agent's not as good. So we're winding up doing more work for less pay. There's no equity there. Okay. So now we'll be able to say, hey, this is the bundle of services I provide. This is my resume. When they talk about, well, I read in a report that on average it takes, 42 hours to represent a buyer to close a transaction. If you're getting paid $30,000, that's too much money. Well, what we need to be able to communicate effectively is that you're not paying for the 42 hours that I'm working with you. You're paying for all the experience that I have to get you the outcome that you want. And I think on one of our masterminds, somebody talked about the mechanic who charged $25,000 to get the ship's engine going by just tapping a wrench somewhere. He's like, well, isn't that a lot of money for tapping the wrench? He's like, well, you're paying for all the experience, so I knew exactly where to tap the what piece I knew what to tap to get the ship's engine running again. So those are the things that are going to be, a big shift in our mind, and it's mostly in our mind, not the consumers. And, we need to be the leader here. We can't be, fumbling over words. We can't be lacking answers to the clients, because we won't be selected, or we won't be getting paid what we deserve. All right. I know this kind of went a little bit off course, but I think if we can all get to the place where when this is done, however it lands, we will be in a better place. I certainly feel that way. And by tuning in here and networking with your peers, you'll get to that better place much quicker. Any other comments? And I'll open up for any procedural questions. I'll do my best to answer those if there's nothing else.
I have a question. I have to report back to NAR. Do you guys know where this started, when this started, and how good this is good for? It started 5 years ago with the DOJ in Missouri, and this agreement is good for 7 years. So buckle up, guys, because it's not over. Did anybody know that?
Thank you for that
and
information.
Right, but so Deborah, the DOJ though, even if they their consent decree, they said, well, we can open up another investigation. So it's just, the best agents will continue to be paid. They'll earn a very good living because, home ownership is still, the American dream. People want to live in a house, and people need somebody that's competent to help them, accomplish their housing aspirations. So there's a lot of noise out there. There will be change. And Deborah, I'd be surprised if it doesn't change twice or 3 times in that 7-year period.
There's already new things out there that we're hearing about that we're getting hit with.
Right.
That's why I want to caution everyone to be careful on that. And then also caution you on when you talk to other agents. Try not to use the word commission, compensation, percent, things like that. When we have our conversations at Florida Realtors and at NAR, we talk about bananas, apples, things like that. We say, we're going to give you 2 bananas, because they don't even want us using the words, which is crazy. Us talking in our company is one thing on this meeting, but when we talk to others, just be cautionary, because they are putting people out there to scan MLS is like crazy. And for those of us in South Florida, we're getting scammed. And okay, it is scanned, but I keep saying scammed, and I got to stop that. So just be very careful when you're talking to other agents. Also try and use an analogy on something else, because they're coming after us in full force.
And Deborah, I appreciate the warning. And a lot of our business though is done, face to face. With both buyers now will be more face to face, and sellers, the overwhelming majority of listing appointments and listings taken, I still believe, are done face to face, because we need to look at the inventory, we need to look at the house, right? We need to give them all those tips and advice to position the house. You need to do a few minor things to get your maximum value. So
that's correct, but they're talking about agent to agent. They don't want us agent to agent, because we're in that antitrust, we're all one company, and it sounds like we're price fixing, and that's where it's stupid. I understand that. However, that is some of their ways that they're coming after it. That's where the rub comes in, is agent to agent.
So you're saying that if I call an agent, I want to show their listing. And I call the agent and I say to them, if they don't send me a compensation form, because I know we talked about before going on show assist, you know who the agent is that's showing the property. If your seller is paying a commission to the buyer's agent, you can send that form signed by the seller to that buyer's broker, knowing that they're gonna get a commission on this property. That's
Correct,
legal. Okay,
correct.
but you're saying that if I called you and said, Deborah, listen, I'm gonna show you a listing this afternoon. Okay, at 2 o'clock, are you guys paying any kind of compensation to the buyer's broker?
Correct.
That's,
Just
that's wrong.
what I'm saying is be very careful when you're calling on that. It's on a specific thing, but when you're talking in general, also with agents, be just be aware, be careful, and just try to start changing some of your verbiage.
See,
That's all.
Question,
it-
I want to say something. I think we need to understand that we have two roles, or, you know, one or the other at a specific time. You're either a listing agent or you're a buyer's agent. When you take that listing, you are negotiating for your compensation, and you let the seller know that it would be to their benefit to offer some sort of a compensation to the other agent's broker, or offer a discount on their closing costs or whatever. So you, as a listing agent, have that down pat when you take the listing, right? So if your seller has agreed to compensate the buyer's broker, you have that down pat. But as when you wear the other hat as a buyer's agent, first thing you do is you have to have a conversation with the buyer that now they're hiring you for your qualifications, and you're going to do all this for them to find them the perfect property, and you're going to negotiate their best deal. For that service, the buyer is going to pay you a compensation. So the buyer already knows ahead of time what their duties are. In other words, to work with you, they have agreed to pay your broker a compensation. In other words, you as the buyer's agent. So you have that down pat. So what I'm seeing is everybody's working, trying to get the commission from the seller. As long as the buyer understands that they are hiring you and they're paying you, that should not be a problem. Now,
Yeah, here's
you
what's
can
gonna
tell
happen.
the buyer, this is my fee. You and I have agreed to a 3% commission. This is going to be on you. Okay, this is coming out of your pocket. Now I can try to get a commission, you know, a part of your, you know, I can try to get the seller to give you funds at closing to
Compensation.
pay your closing costs, which would include my compensation. But you know, we have to be you have to wear two hats. If you're a buyer's agent or a seller's agent, a listing agent, you once you get that pat, there's no need to call there's really no need to call a listing agent to find out how much they're going to pay you, because you've already had the discussion with the buyer. You've already they understand, the buyers understand that they are going to pay you. You're going to try to get money.
Right, but I guess, Rosa, the
What,
question,
you know, what I think is that we're looking too much into what the standard is now. You look at the MLS, you click on the showing, you know, not me, but a lot of agents click and show 7 houses. All right. They don't even know what they're saying. Their
compensation is.
you know, and there is no communication between listing agents and buyer's agents. So I think it's going to provide us a window to speak to each other, buyers and listing, you know, buyers agents and listing agents. But once, you know, in my idea, this is how I'm going to handle it. As a listing agent, I have that conversation with the seller. They either pay a compensation to the buyer's agent or they don't. It's in their best interest to cooperate, but they don't have to do that. And as a buyer's agent, I have to have that conversation with my buyer. This is what I'm going to do for you. These are my fees. Are you happy with it? They'll say, yes, Rosa, I'll pay you your 3%. Don't worry. Or I don't have that money. I'm limited. So my task from the buyer is try to help me get your compensation paid by the
Seller.
listing agent. So you have to have an understanding of what your role is and where your compensation is coming from before you go out with that buyer.
Rosa, I agree. I concur with everything that you've said, and we're on the same page. And it
Mhm.
comes back to the question I originally asked, in that
Right.
if we have a 3% brokerage commission with our buyer, and I've started doing that already. So if we have that and the seller is compensating 1%, there is an arrangement with my buyer for 3%. So there is going to be a 2% compensation that's in difference from my buyer because the seller is paying 1%, correct?
Yes.
I think I'm getting more confused than ever because, I mean, from what I'm just hearing from, I guess it was Rosa here, is that as long as you have a compensation on your buyer's agreement form, she's indicating you don't need to worry about what the seller's offering, but I don't agree with that because all of this stuff is a negotiation, and I think a buyer might not want to be even considering properties where he perceives the seller's not going to offer anything.
Right.
No,
Jeff,
what I'm not saying is that you don't need to worry about it, is that you need to make sure that your buyer understands that they're going to be on the hook for your compensation. They've already agreed to hire you. You do have a conversation with the buyer that you're going to try to get the seller to help you with that expense, okay? But it's not that you need to worry about it, but how would it look that you as the buyer's agent go on the MLS and there's 5 listings? Okay, are you going to make 5 phone calls and show and try to get the one that's already negotiated 3% and not show the one that's 1% commission?
That's not
right.
right.
So,
You
right.
can't.
So hold on, Rosa, let me just try to wrap this up. And before I do, next Friday is July 5th. So everybody's going to have a break from the Friday mastermind. I think I know what my one on the 12th is going to be. And I am going to try to bring all this home and try to do it in an hour, which is going to be like a magic trick. But Rosa, if I understand you correctly, maybe I could paraphrase this, but if we have a buyer's agency agreement and let's say the seller, we show those 5 houses, we shouldn't even care about what they're offering out because if they're putting out 3%, 5%, 0%, our offer is going to be contingent upon them giving us a 3% buyer's concession if it's necessary for the buyer to close. And that's going to be part of the math and how they analyze transactions. And this is just hold on, this is just a shift in the way that we think, because right now we get 3 offers, 510, 505, 525, appraisal gap, down payment. We're looking at those things. Now we're gonna have to look at appraisal gap, down payment, and how much are they requesting as a seller concession, if anything. And we're going to need to be, as a listing agent, we're going to need to be a more valued, trusted advisor, because we need to extrapolate and interpret all these different data points to help our seller make the right choice on which offer to accept. And then the converse on the buyer side is, Rosa's suggesting that we're blind to whatever they're offering, because what they're offering, like if they're saying I'm selling my house for 500,000, in this market, many of us have to pay 510 for it. So that doesn't have any bearing in what you're going to pay. So now what you're going to pay is going to be all the things that we normally look at, plus the seller concession or the sales concession or the buyer commission, whatever you're going to put in there. Okay. That's going to just be a factor in analyzing those offers. And as a listing agent, this is going to be a skill set that we're going to have to highlight, that we're going to be able to help them interpret all these different offers that are going to be overwhelming. So I think, Rosa, you kind of brought it home. And I hope I characterized it correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. So we actually have to go back to when we took the real estate course and we learned how to apply our skills, within the law, etc. We just have to go back and learn how to negotiate deals. It's right now we're worried about the commission, but I've done deals where I've asked for assistance from the buyer, not only gave them an offer on the sales price, but I've also said, by the way, I also need like $2,000 or $10,000 for closing costs. So this is all going to be part of the negotiation, both with buyers and sellers. And transparency, I guess that's what the law, the new agreement with NAR has made us understand. A lot of people have been more like robots, click the MLS, go show a house. I've gotten appointments on my over 55 communities that people call me, oh, I want to make an offer, and they didn't know it was a 55 and over community. So there's those agents are going to have to just learn how to be real estate agents again. I don't know. That's it.
So Rosa,
Soapbox.
it's separation season where we're not all the same. We're not just opening the door on the buyer side. So I want to unless there's a final question, I want to just wrap it up here because I think we're getting uncomfortable with the change in the process, not the value that we provide. So the procedure is going to change, and that's discomforting for everybody. But the sooner we get our arms around it, and Rosa, you bringing the perspective, I think hopefully opens up a few people's minds to thinking about it differently. Whereas, as a seller's agent, you need to have an enhanced skill set to not only determine appraisal gap, inspection items, down payment, right? Any other contingencies that they have. Now you have to look at what's the request for concession for the buyer and the buyer's agent. And as a buyer's agent, we just need to educate our buyers. This is how it happens. We sign our agreement, then we go and look at houses. Okay, other industries, an attorney, you sign them up on a contingency, it's 35%. I don't know why that's not price fixing, but whatever. But that's just the norm, and everybody's accustomed to it, and everybody will get accustomed to it, and everybody will now be more dependent upon listening to what we have to say to them and guiding them as their fiduciary through the process. People still are making, probably the largest investment they'll ever make. They're still looking for somebody to be a trusted advisor in the process. And I suggest that we all raise our hands, say, we're up for the challenge, and we're going to deliver more value than we get paid for. Not that we're not getting paid fairly, but we're going to deliver more value. And I think that's how we win this.
Hey, Rob, can I add something also?
Absolutely.
All right. Also,
Right.
being in the real estate market is not just only residential. There is commercial, there is rentals, there is different option that you can also earn good money. I mean, commercial is unbelievable. I got commercial 15,000 for a lease. Every lease about 15,000. So commercial is very also another idea to add it to your portfolio.
Yep. So everybody, I wish you all a happy and healthy 4th of July.
Rob,
ahead.
can I just okay. I keep hearing all of this. However, the topic for this was how to talk to a seller. When we're talking to our seller, there is still a box on the MLS that says how much we're giving to the buyer. So we already have that out there. The only thing that the broker to broker does is solidify what we are getting, but they still have on the MLS what the seller is giving, and it is still signed at a listing appointment. So I think that is something that kind of got overlooked. And Rebecca, when you're having this conversation with your seller, if they're going out there to buy, ask and say, okay, you don't want to give to the buyer's agent. I completely understand that. Let me ask you, Mr. Seller, as a buyer, are you willing to pay 2, 3, or 4%? And how is that going to make you feel? And then go from there. And then that's where I'm just going to stop it. But just putting that out there. We already still have it there. It's just in a different, it's just in different wording, and the broker to broker solidifies the compensation.
Right, so we could spend now until the 4th of July on this, but I think everything's gonna be more negotiable, and if somebody's offering out, 2 or 3%, there's nothing stopping us with the buyer under contract asking for a different amount. We might ask for less if we're only working for 2 and they're offering 3. We might say we only want the 2%, and we want to have that advantage in getting the offer accepted. So there's a whole myriad of different things that we can do on both ends. I appreciate you sharing that, and I think that this warrants an hour that is a little bit more, I'll say, regimented in how I go through it, and then we'll stay after for some questions, because a lot of good things were raised here, and I want to do my best to serve you and give you the tools and resources to balance both sides of it and see the opportunity here instead of, feel the frustration. Have a great 4th of July, everybody. I really appreciate your conversation.
Thanks,
Thank
Rob.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.